Hi, and welcome to Wake Up Canada News. I'm Brad Wilder. Today on the show, well, it's all about accountability from our federal government and Justin Trudeau, especially Justin Trudeau. Now, there's no one better than Rebecca Shepherd and Jane Scarf from Stand for Thee and Trudeau for Treason. Ladies, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being here. And thank you again for all of your efforts as you continue with trying to do the right thing for all of us Canadians. Now, Trudeau for Treason is headed west, where I'm sure support is going to grow substantially. Not that the East was weak. I just think that the West brings a lot more oomph to the fight. Rebecca and Jane are with us on their travels today to Winnipeg for tomorrow's event at City Hall, and that's going to be held at 2 p.m., and we'll get into more details as we progress through this particular interview. Now, let's start with, how did you begin Stand for Thee? What drove you to bring that passion forward and really, take a stand?
Well, it was when the mask mandates came in Ontario. Up until that point, I had seen the protests taking place in Queen's Park, and I hadn't made a decision to get involved. And but once the government decided that they were going to try and force me to wear a mask on my face, that was when I said no. The following Saturday, I marched myself into Queen's Park and said, "Who's running this? How do I get involved right now?" And I started out with Hugs Over Masks. And then in November of 2020, Stand for Thee was born. And the goal of Stand for Thee is very different than just doing protests. We actually don't do protests. We will do rallies. We will do information sessions. We will go out and connect with people. But we aren't about walking down the street yelling freedom. That's not. We need to move beyond that. That time is over.
Sure is.
And so initially, we didn't really have a lot of direction, because this isn't my forte in life. I mean, I guess it is actually, but it wasn't something that I had experience with. So I didn't know what I was doing, and we were trying all kinds of things and working on different things. And then things really came together when I started working with Jane. And when Jane brought forward the Bill of Rights, and then that's when the action started to get solidified. We had been working with parent groups, teacher groups, union people, what they call frontline workers, and all of these different groups. And we didn't really have a button-down thing that we have now, which is first and foremost educating and informing on the law, and then secondly, actions that help people stand in their authority, stand up for their rights, and hold people accountable. And that is using due process of law through the courts to hold individuals, not entities, but individuals accountable for their personal actions. And now with the Trudeau for Treason, when the convoy came to town, wherever it came to town, across Canada, I mean, we were there. Jane and I and many others were boots on the ground every day in Ottawa. We met the truckers. We saw what was going on with the self-appointed leaders that inserted themselves into the convoy. And that's kind of when we saw just how far our government is willing to go in terms of undermining our rights. And I want to be clear, everything they have done is illegal. Everything. They have not a single law that supports the mask mandates, the jib-jab mandates, any of those things. This is all done through weak bylaws or actually subverting laws. And so when we saw what happened with the Emergencies Act, well, that's treason. That's the definition of treason. And now we have CSIS coming forward saying, excuse me, guys, we have a problem. There is Chinese electoral interference, and there is Chinese infiltration at all levels of government, including city council, which we know because of the 50-minute cities that's being rolled out all across Canada. So it's many different fronts, but at the end of the day, it all rolls up to foreign interference, which is the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and the World Health Organization. And guess what? We live in a democratic country, and we don't have to tolerate this. We can stand up for ourselves. We can take action, and we can nip this in the bud. But we all have to be part of this.
100%. We're seeing people stand up all over the world, and we're seeing Canadians slowly start to rally and start to understand a little bit more as the days progress. Obviously, the U.S. plays a big role of what's going on here in Canada as well, and we're starting to see Joe Biden being called out and his whole administration. I think, we're doing the same thing here in Canada finally, where we're starting to see individuals like Pierre Poilievre and other cabinet ministers starting to speak up against what's going on. Let's talk about Trudeau for treason, because that's the big event tomorrow, and that's going to be the most important part of this message is, how did you come up with Trudeau for treason? I mean, there was a lot of treasonous things I know that he's accomplished, but what was the first thing that really set you off? What was that one issue that you went, whoa?
Yeah, Jane, you take that, please.
We're looking to raise awareness, like 20% critical mass understanding that what he's done is illegal and that we do have strong enforceable laws to deal with it. And we could recognize that there's obviously going to be reluctance by the bureaucrats and by, police and whatever to actually get on it on their own steam. They're not going to do it on their own steam. I'm 71. I've done social action pretty much all my adult life. And that's how you have to do it. When you first see some huge injustice or malfeasance or whatever, and you go to the authorities, there's reluctance. And then so you have to, put the spotlight on it and get people to see what's going on and put the pressure and demand. And once they do that, many of them are only too happy to say, oh, well, we must do this now. And this is what's starting to already happen. I think we've played some hand in it, but there's other people also that have recognized the extent of this treasonous activity. And with the Emergency Act, what's gone on there is he brought that in without a vote in cabinet that is required by the Emergency Act. So in other words, he pulled it out of his ass, and he didn't have the grounds as defined in it. And as well, there was other issues. They're not supposed to do it just with one province. They're only supposed to do it after the police have exhausted all of their, ball of tricks, which they didn't exhaust any. They hadn't done. They were negotiating still, and successfully negotiating. They moved 102 trucks off of the downtown streets in, I think, 2 days. And there was still a schedule to have more removed. And then there was interference through the mayor/federal government to stop the continuation of that negotiation that went on between the police and the protesters. So they didn't meet the conditions. And as well, the act clearly disallows them to override our rights, even in the case of an emergency. If you read the preamble of the Emergency Act, it says nada, particularly for the Bill of Rights, because there's no loophole there. So that's another area. So in doing this, they used violence. So they used violence against the people to undermine the sovereignty, because in a democracy, we are the sovereign. So it's undermining our sovereignty. Like if it's a monarchy, the sovereign is the queen or the king or whatever, dictatorship. But democracy, it's us. So he used violence to undermine our sovereignty, which is the definition of treason. And we're very serious. We're not putting this in these terms to be dramatic or to catch attention. We are dead cold serious. And we've created an incident report that's been filed by police in many different jurisdictions. People have filed with the RCMP and their local police, OPP, I believe also. And there's lots of really hard evidence in their affidavits, drone footage of what happened, how they kettled everyone. Yeah. And then all this violence took place where there was no provocation for it. There was no activity going on that would have justified an all-out attack.
Even the trampling of the horse. When you look at it from an aerial footage, there was a whole line of police just milling around doing nothing, and there was hardly any protesters. But when you look at it from eye level, you see a completely different view. So we have all of this evidence that shows. And by the way, when you go and read through the reports and you go and read through the documentation that sits on the House of Commons website, they still will talk about how the Ambassador Bridge was a blockade. No, it wasn't. First of all, it never was. And secondly, it had been cleared as of the 11th when there was an injunction to clear the bridge, yet they still use that as part of their grounds.
Yeah. And that even that injunction was BS because there was one lane cleared prior to it going to court. And there was a video footage and a sworn statement given that there's one lane open. And the police came in without a sworn statement, without swearing in themselves, with no video, and said, oh no, it's all blocked. So that's why they were able to get the injunction, because the court was told falsely that all the lanes were blocked. So it never was blockade in the first place.
So there's been a ton of things now that have happened with regards to him committing treasonous acts. Obviously, his involvement now with China becomes something of the forefront and something we all need to pay attention to going forward. Listen, he's got 52 cabinet ministers there that have all been young global leaders in the World Economic Forum. There's always somebody ready to take his spot next who has the same philosophy, the same indoctrination within themselves. And what do you think is going to happen with regards to the World Economic Forum and their influence here in Canada going forward?
Well, I think we have one more chance to turn it around. And that's because we don't have the Dominion voting process yet. It's still hand counted ballots. So you can really scrutinize that. And at least, the ones on voting day, I think the pre-votes can get out of hand, but the ones done on voting day, it's quite easy to make sure that they're all counted properly. And I think that if we just chug along the way we are, we're just going to get the same shit, different pile. So we have to put something in place to give a real option. And what we're working on right now is to run a slate of independents. So a coalition of independents. So no party, we have no incorporation, so no hierarchy. And a coalition can designate the prime minister if they get enough seats, the same number of seats as a party would have to get. But in a coalition, the prime minister would be a spokesperson. It wouldn't be the dictator of the party. It wouldn't be the whip carrier or whatever. Right. And running as independents, each independent would run their own platform. They don't have to have the same platform as everybody else. They can respond to their constituents and have a different platform. But together, there's a lot of things that can be done in terms of they can have discussion on issues that are being brought up, and they can do like a consensus or whatever, like pre-vote consensus, things like that, without any requirement, that everybody has to vote a certain way. And I think that by and large, it is quite easily determinable what is in the public interest. So if you have a slate of Canadians running a platform relative to the needs and interests of their constituents, I think it'd be relatively easy to get a proper positive vote on issues as they come up through the coalition approach. And I think that's the only thing that's going to circumvent this, because people don't even want to hear about any new party. They just yawn, snooze.
Well, if they're going to find out about one world government right away, and one worried about a party or a federal, it's all about to change, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, people know that new parties don't cut the mustard. They never do, never have, never do. And you don't know until, quite a long time what they're going to be all about. So, we can't just throw together a new party and say, here, vote for us. But if individuals in the community, hopefully largely among the activist community, so they can show that they have an interest and a willingness to get involved and take a stance, things like that. Hopefully individuals like that will run.
Well, that is going to be the key for sure.
Yeah, I think that'll give us a fighting chance.
All right, Rebecca, what do you say to people now? Well, before we get to that next question, let me go back, because tomorrow's event starts at 2 p.m. at City Hall, downtown Winnipeg. and you're about to. I'm shocked. Thank you for coming. I knew you were kind of maybe putting the brakes on there in Ontario at the border, but you actually are making your way all the way here. So thank you for that. It'll be great to see you tomorrow and see you do your thing up there, because I know that people do want to hear from the leader, right? They want to hear from somebody who is actually, putting this together and has that ability to do that communicatively, where, it's not only being, I guess, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but your tone is aggressive in a sense that you're not going to back down. You're standing up for what Canadians need and what Canadians deserve.
It's called no nonsense. It's called no nonsense.
No nonsense. Yes, that's a great way to put that. So, people will say, what do you say to people that accuse you of wanting to overthrow the government, or subvert the government? I don't think that that's your cause here, but
no, not at all.
People are kind of maybe confused sometimes along the way when they see that Trudeau for treason sticker, and that can throw them off, and they go, oh, there's just another conspiracy theorist. Well, that's the thing about having you on the show today, is you bring the facts.
Yeah. So I want to take a step back that I don't want to be seen as a leader. What I'm doing is taking action just as anybody else can. I happen to have a platform, and I happen to have a lot of good people working with me, like Jane Scarf and, the folks that are with me today, Janice and Christina and many others. But we're not here to be leaders. We're here to help guide people and show them that they can be part of change. In terms of overthrowing the government, I can't change people's opinion. However, it doesn't take long. If you just go to our website and read the material on our site, you'll see that everything that we're talking about is upholding the law. So overthrowing the government is not upholding the law. And if I'm accusing somebody of treason, then it wouldn't make sense for me to commit treason. So if we're trying to, if the goal from any individual or organization is to
rule of law,
thank you, Jane, is to hold these individuals accountable for breaking the law, then it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to break the law.
Right.
We are very much about respecting the rule of law. We do have a high regard for the Constitution, minus the Charter, which is not a Bill of Rights. It's a declaration, and it wasn't properly vetted, and it's UK law, as a matter of fact.
Right.
So we're looking at some actions that involve the fact that civil liberties is a federal responsibility, and that criminal law is federal. So masking is a criminal law. So the province has brought that in. That's out of jurisdiction, things like that. Right. And also, just while we're on it, there are no parties in our Constitution. There are in the American Constitution, but not in the Canadian Constitution. So what we're proposing here is more conducive or more consistent with what the Constitution, our Constitution dictates, because it's the individual that runs, and the party affiliation is something that they choose to do on the side. The party doesn't actually run.
I don't think anybody's got a handle on it like you two ladies do. So thank you for every bit of effort that you continue to put in. We mentioned police. Let's talk about them for just a brief moment. What do you think about Canadian police now? Because there's a lot of, they see the rhetoric coming out of the States, defund the police. They see Antifa, Black Lives Matter going head to head with all these people. Some of us here in Canada have wondered where they've been for the past 2.5, 3 years. But people still need to keep that paycheck rolling in, and I'm not coming down on the police at all for anything that way, but I wonder where you stand on police.
I'll take that one. We believe that in Ontario, the police have had our back throughout this pandemic in a major way, and in a way that people don't really understand and recognize. One of the first things that occurred was this business of you can't have more than X number of people in a gathering. And it went down to 5. And the police were supposed to, if they got a complaint from the neighbor, they were supposed to burst into your house, remove everybody, children, granny, everybody, out on their ass, and lock your door and not open it until they believed it was safe to do so. And the police didn't publicly state that they weren't going to do it, but they didn't do it. They only would do it in Ontario with a court order, which is a completely different kettle of fish. It would have to do with a court order based on risk, based on the Health Protection Act, blah, blah, blah. So it was outside this COVID-19 measures that were brought in. And another way that they had a major impact on the way, well, two others, but one was the stay-home orders. They issued a letter in Ontario. Every single police station supported a refusal to do the stay-home orders, and that was in writing, and they didn't do it. There was a little bit by the OPP, but they gave it up too. They just did it right at the beginning, and I think they were kind of embarrassed out of it because the regional police wouldn't do it. And related to that was the way in which they were creating public health framework such that public health would have acquired the authority to create law out of their ass. Like no discussion, no nothing.
Right.
Like the way they worded it, it said that the shop owner was required to follow the directions and recommendations and something else of the public health in the following topics. So mask, vaccination, social distancing, whatever. They made a list of things, but not specifying. So the public health could say, oh, well, you have to wear a mask this week. And if you don't, there's penalties under the ROH, which would have required police and court intervention. And from what I can see, the police didn't cooperate with that. And it looks like it's been abandoned. That process has been abandoned. So they tried to get it. They tried to flip lawmaking authority over to public health, for Christ's sakes, to base it, like loosely on their opinion of what risk may be imminent.
I would have liked to have seen a little more something from them over the COVID period, but now you bring Trudeau for treason up, and you've been to police stations across the country and submitted these documents and affidavits and stuff. And well, what happens from here? How come they're not doing anything? How come they're not lifting a finger?
CSIS has come out and clearly warned people. So that's through that policing system.
Are CSIS our friends, guys?
We don't know.
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
I think so.
Not sure, though, but it looks like it.
Yeah, and let's remember, CSIS is not an enforcement agency. So they can't.
Information, yeah.
And I want to go back to the police for a quick minute because, listen, don't get me wrong. There are jerks in every group, right? And, I was there when they dropped the hammer on the 18th of February in 2022. We all saw what they did. And I want to remind people, and I saw the bus loads, right? They had to ship police in. And there's something like 50,000 police officers in Canada. And I would suspect the majority of them are in Ontario because of the population. And there weren't even enough officers in Ontario to take on this role of what happened in Ottawa. They had to bring them from all across the country and from wherever else. So that tells me that if they had to ship them in from other places, then we really don't have a systemic problem. We have the asshole list, is what I call them. Yeah. These are the people that bring in the assholes to, cause, go stir it up.
A good point to demonstrate what you're saying is Adamson Barbecue. That was not Toronto police that attacked there. That was off-duty police officers hired by public health as private security.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Including the horses. The whole thing was a big psyop.
Yeah.
And I think Dundas Square, the attack at Dundas Square, was also the same thing. It was a psyop. Like they gathered, as she said, the psychopaths that are easily recruitable to do that kind of violent act against citizens. But they couldn't put it through the normal policing process. It was not. They didn't allow it. And in Ottawa, that protest, the convoy ran 3 weeks, and the police were positive, and they interacted in a very positive, effective way. There wasn't tension between the police
Not
and
at
the
all.
protesters. It's very positive. And they had the criminal code. So had the protest been illegal, they could have used the criminal code to bring in measures against it.
Sure.
And they didn't. They were negotiating at the end there to just reduce the cars on the surrounding streets and just have them on Wellington, and then surrounding areas, like not, they just wanted to get them off the, like Bank Street and O'Connor and all those other surrounding streets to Wellington.
Right. Okay, so Rebecca, what do you consider the best outcome of this initiative to be now? Where are we headed that way?
So just to go back to your point, traveling from the east to the west, I'm telling you that the further west we're going, we're getting much more positive responses. We're just in a Tim Hortons here, and everyone's smiling and waving, and we've been having some chats with the folks as we go along. And, you know, I think the general sentiment is people are tired. People have had enough. So many people have been impacted in so many different ways. You know, the economy, jobs, food prices, gas prices. You know, they're now, it's, you know, CSIS is saying, listen, we've got a problem here. There's Chinese there's Chinese implants in every level of the government. This electoral interference has been going on for 50 years that CSIS and RCMP was aware of, and the government shut down Sidewinder in 2001 that started in 1995. So it's hard to say who the problem is, right? Because, you know, when it comes to CSIS, I joke and I say they're like, you know, blink twice. Guys, we need help because they can't do it. And they're telling us, they're putting...
We have to empower our bureaucrats and our police. We have to, by being aware and, you know, like expressing and basically demanding them to act, to enforce these laws. And if that doesn't happen, they're not going to. That's clear. But I think they will gladly do it if we, you know, if we understand and express that. And I think that is what's occurring now. People are starting to catch on.
The outcome is to try to get him to be held accountable, Justin Trudeau to be held accountable?
Not just Justin Trudeau, the entire Liberal executive branch who was part of this. And also any government, any level of government that's involved with foreign interference with the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and the WHO. And that means City Council, who is putting forward what they call the strategic plan. Every city in Canada has a strategic plan that rolls up to the 15-minute city, which is the C40 World Economic Forum initiative. And this is all about climate control, which is really about people control, this net zero plan. And this is what this is all about, is controlling us, getting us into these inner city prisons. I'm here, you know, we were in Thunder Bay last night, and we went to a meeting with Hydro One, which threatened the owners of these farms, these homesteads, and said, if you don't let us put those lines in, we're going to invoke legislation and force you. Excuse me.
5G towers, right?
Yeah. No, they're not 5G towers. But they may as well be. These are those big hydro lines. And we walked up to a hydro line behind this woman's house, and it is, you can't live near these. It's a hum that is extremely, you know, a lot of radiation here. There's a lot of cancers that stem from being in these areas. And to hear these people from a private entity threaten these homeowners when they have absolutely no authority to implement any piece of legislation, and for the balls of them to sit there and look at the owners and say, well, this is voluntary until it's not.
Yeah.
How dare they? And how
we're going to take your land. If you don't surrender it, we're going to take it.
And that's it. This is what they're doing, right? They're flooding people out, burning them out, and getting them out of there with EMFs. So enough of this shit. This is all part of this World Economic Forum and United Nations plan, and anyone who's involved needs to be held accountable, whether it starts from the top or the bottom. And and how we accomplish this is for everybody to take action, which is why we're on this tour, to first of all educate and inform, and we have actions that people can take in the moment and in the comforts of their own home. Let's not be victims.
Yeah.
Let's not be victims.
Digital. Yeah, we have those digital forms to disallow sharing of any of our personal information between corporations or between government programs or whatever, and they're not allowed legally. And they are clearly already doing it, because Ontario government put their own form out for people who didn't want to share information with the pharmacies. So in other words, it will be shared unless you fill out this form and say don't share it. But that's not legal. They're supposed to get the consent first.
Right.
So
right.
we're kind of, stepping it up. We've made our own forms, and these forms are to the Ontario government, stating that we don't want any information shared between programs such as healthcare, driver's license, and private, like to the pharmacies or to the doctors or whatever. No sharing of the information. And we also have another form that is for your bank, your phone company, your doctor, whoever.
Just excluding everybody from sharing. I understand. Sure. And that's a good form to have going forward. No doubt about that. Time is always a factor, ladies. I want to thank you both for being here. We can't say enough about all your efforts. We look forward to seeing you, Rebecca, tomorrow live and in person.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm going to bring my camera crew. We're going to come down there tomorrow. We'll shoot everything that's going on at City Hall, make sure we have an accurate picture going forward. So that anybody out west, and I've got a lot of friends. I used to live in Alberta myself for 25 years, so I'll be able to fire this off to them, and they'll get people fired up and ready to meet you in Calgary.
Right on.
Amazing.
And
if
any of your viewers are from the Kingston area, we also have a Trudeau for Treason Trail appearance in Kingston tomorrow at between 12 and 2 at Confederation Park.
All right.
Which is right across from City Hall. Yep.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank you for that, Jane.
2 p.m. here in Winnipeg tomorrow. This is it. It's your chance to be involved and get active. You're wondering what you can do, where you fit in. Rebecca's found her place. Jane has found hers. I've obviously found mine. Now it's time for you, listeners and viewers, to do the exact same thing. We got a place for you, and we'll help you find it. This is.
Yeah, I always tell people it's like a smorgasbord.
That's right.
Pick your topic. There's no lack of
There's
choice.
no shortage there at all. I agree with you. Thank you both for being here today. Safe travels on your way to Winnipeg. We'll see you tomorrow. This is Wake Up Canada News. Remember, you're the voice, and it's time to make it count.